If you've been with us throughout the afternoon on Fox Local, we have talked about Operation Home for the Holidays and heard from the Attorney General earlier today holding a news conference in Tampa where he announced that 122 children were rescued. They made 6 felony arrests as they searched for missing and endangered children all across the state of Florida in a number of areas. Well, Fox 35's Marie Edinger got an inside look at this operation. She was with US Marshals as they went on this operation recently and talked with us earlier about what she saw and how this operation went down.
Yeah, I got to spend 3 days with the US Marshals as they were going about this operation. I also got to talk with people from FDLE and local law enforcement agencies who were partnering up with the US Marshal Service for this operation. And I got to go to what they're calling the Hub, which is the center, the Child Advocacy Center set up that they'd put together specifically for this operation that gave kids access to all sorts of different resources, from medical or mental health help to other sorts of advocacy. So whether they needed contact with DCF, if they needed career training, if they needed basically anything at all, they just had all of this available to them all at once. That was the real push for this particular operation that Marshal Service was doing. So it wasn't just about finding the kids. It was trying to make sure that they have better outcomes in the future. About 50% of the kids they find, they know will wind up back out again. They're trying to change that number by actually providing the things that that could take to make a difference for those kids' lives moving forward.
So kind of take us through some of what we are looking at here and what this was like as they were looking for these kids in different places all across the state.
Yeah, I was surprised by how much movies really get it right for the idea of like police or law enforcement officers staking out certain places or looking around or trying to find somebody. It really did feel like that, spending time with these officers, or actually deputies, excuse me, US Marshal Service, they're called deputies. So we all would meet up at this command center at FDLE headquarters in Orlando. I was with the Orlando branch of this operation. And then you'd talk with people who were gathering information all throughout the day, trying to get tips or trying to make calls maybe to somebody's school or get information from family members who may have seen one of the missing children on the list. Once they get a tip, they go out and kind of meet up all together as a group to form a plan to talk about anything you might need to know. For instance, the last day I was with them, the child we were searching for had several active warrants and had felony warrants in the past. He's a known gang member. He's still a missing and endangered child. So that type of thing is discussed. Just any information that you might need to be aware of before you go into something. Anything that you might not want to do, for instance, because for that particular child, there was a gang affiliation that the marshals knew about. The deputies chose to not just go up and knock on the door that they believed he might potentially be in. So things just get a little bit more complicated than that. Other than that, we would try to make contact with family members. So whether that was going to their last known address and seeing if they're there, seeing if they have any information, or just calling around, everything really has to be approached with sensitivity because a lot of these kids don't want to be found. Some of them don't know that they're in a situation in which they're being taken advantage of. For instance, the day before I joined up with these deputies, there was a child they were able to recover who was living with a person she believed was her boyfriend, who was significantly older than her, something like 3 times her age. So that's a situation where not only is she a minor, and so that would constitute statutory rape if they were having any sort of interaction there, but it's also just a head game that you have to approach with care and with understanding, and then try to get that person resources. So it's kind of a step-by-step, just go about, gather all the information you possibly can in trying to find a missing and endangered child until maybe you actually are able to find them. And then the last step is getting them help. But it was time consuming. There's a lot of time just going around waiting to see, we think they might be in this area, so we're just going to sit here and see if they show up. Or we believe this is their family member's house. Okay, it turns out not to be. What's the address before then? Or do these neighbors know anything about where they may have been if this was their address before? It's just very, very involved and time consuming. And so for this operation over the course of 2 weeks to have resulted in 122 kids being found is honestly astonishing. It's really, really amazing the work that went into it.
And you kind of touched on it, but it's all different circumstances. I mean, we're talking a wide range here.
Yeah, that was one of the things the Marshal Service really wanted to emphasize is they know when people hear the term missing and endangered, they probably, like a lot of people jump to assume that it's human trafficking every time. And sometimes it is. That was the case for some of these children, but not all of them. Some of them might have just been kids who ran away. They had a difficult home life, or some of them ran away from their foster homes. And so you have to find them and figure out what led them to do that in the first place. Were they being abused in that household, and that's why they left in the first place? Were they going to see a person that they just wanted to live with because they're teenagers and they might think they're almost adults and can do what they want, and they're just not reporting back with their parents? But it's not an abusive situation. It was their own choice. Turns out they're okay. You got to figure that out either way. And then again, get them counseling to talk about what resources might help them out so that they can be happier in the situation that they're supposed to be in. And then, so it's just all sorts of things. Sometimes it's children leaving of their own accord. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's people being taken advantage of in a way that they don't realize. Sometimes they know they're being taken advantage of and don't know what to do about it. These are children we're talking about. They aren't making the same logical decisions that a person, I mean, their brains aren't fully formed yet, and they have a bunch of hormones going on. So it's just a different approach, and there's all sorts of reasons they might be missing. One of the children that we actually were able to recover that I was there for was somebody who, he was 16 years old. He'd been living with his grandparents for quite some time. Both of his parents are known drug addicts and had had a lot of trouble in the past with the legal system. So he was with his grandparents, but he said he just didn't feel close to them. In the end, it turned out he'd been living with a friend's family. And so he was trying to loosely keep in contact with other family members just to let them know that he was okay. But he didn't want to be found. He was happy where he was. We still have to find him and then determine, okay, he's safe in the situation that he's in, but that's not a legally viable situation unless his grandparents approve for him to stay there. So we have to get him access and a better solution, which they actually did wind up doing after taking him to the hub. That was the Child Advocacy Center setup. So he was able to talk with counselors who were able to get him in, and victims advocates who were able to get him to have a conversation with his grandparents about what to do moving forward. And his situation wound up from where things ended at the end of that operation really tremendous for him. And it was kind of like the best case scenario where all parties involved got to have a conversation and got to work towards a better solution for everyone. And then they'll have continuing access to care in case that child does need counseling or to talk about, their home life, which had not been idyllic if it weren't, even if it wasn't necessarily the same type of thing that other kids are experiencing, where it's a gang affiliation that led them to run or anything else that you could possibly think of.
What was it like seeing some of those interactions when they finally did, make contact with these children and whoever they were with?
That also varies a ton. That particular kid who I was just talking about, he was very cooperative. It was kind of like, he said something, I'm forgetting the exact quote, but it was essentially that he knew he was going to be caught eventually. So when the marshals were able to make contact with him by phone and essentially tell him to turn himself in, they were able to arrange a meeting point because he said he knew they were going to get him. He might as well cooperate. And it wound up really working out for the best for him. Other kids, they tried and just never were able to contact. Other kids were still in a rebellious phase and felt like the marshals were interfering with their lives and they just wanted to do whatever they wanted to do, and these adults can't tell them anything. It takes a lot to break through to that. That's why the people at the hub have that specialized training, and they have all sorts of different clinical psychologists and people who are trauma informed and people who understand the different developmental stages that children are going through. So, for instance, how you might treat or interact with a 9-year-old is going to be different from how you treat or interact with a 16-year-old. So the points of contact initially really vary. Some of the kids are mad. One kid, at least one that I know of in Orlando, wound up running away. The marshals had to chase after him. And then again, a couple of them wound up just kind of essentially turning themselves in after the marshals were able to make contact. But even getting to the point where you make contact takes a lot of work, because again, these kids in some cases ran away or are hiding, or somebody is hiding them. It's not like you just give them a call most of the time and they pick up and say, fine, I'll walk in.
Did anything surprise you seeing this firsthand, or anything?
I think everything about it surprised me. I remember joking with one of our managers saying, oh, it turns out kids are really hard to find, because the first day that I was with the marshals, they were not able to recover anybody in the time frame that I was there. And the third day also, we spent all day trying to find this kid just to come up short. And it makes sense. I mean, that's why they're pouring all of these resources in, and why it's so important to have that available. This particular operation was the second in Florida this year. There was one earlier in the Tampa area that recovered another 60 kids. So you can imagine, I mean, 60 kids recovered there. And in this operation, 122 more. And that's just chipping away at the list. There are lots and lots of missing and endangered children out there in our area that local law enforcement just doesn't always have the resources to be able to go find. Because think about it, as I'm describing, I mean, it is a lot of time and effort. And in some cases, this is dangerous. So that's why the marshals had so many local partners. In one of the operations we were doing that third day, we had assistance from FDLE, the Daytona Beach Police Department. We had officers who were localized but were assisting with FDLE in order to be deployed along with the marshals and provide backup. Some of that is just doing, teams at a time are assigned. You go knock on this door, try to find grandma. You go try to find the brother and see if any of them have information. You go sit at this apartment complex and go around and see if you see anything or if anybody knows anything. Other times it's we need to all come together because we're knocking on a door that we think could be dangerous for us. And so we need people to do backup. There was a huge amount of effort and of resources. And again, that's just not always possible for local law enforcement officers to deal with on a daily basis. So it's really hard to find these kids. That's why it was so incredible to have this huge push to at least try to find as many kids as possible during this operation when we had the resources available.